Hi guys, today we're on location. I'm doing a location shot now. I've got out of the living room and I've gotten out of the car. But I'm here in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee at the Apple Barn. And this place has everything you can imagine that you would make from an apple or make look like an apple. They've got apple butter, apple chips, apple bread, apple jelly, apple jam, apple everything, apple in this place. They're everywhere. This place is surrounded apples, everything. It's just nothing but apples, apple cider. There's it's just everywhere. This place is nothing but apples. And I want to talk today about traditionally we talk about how Adam and Eve, their first temptation was that apple. And we talk, and we know it wasn't an apple, but we do talk about, that it's that we call it an apple all the time. We say that, and they had the one temptation. They had just one, and they weren't supposed to do that one thing, and they did that one thing, that one fruit. And we know, like I said, it wasn't an apple, but they did the one thing. But what we're going to do is today we're going to talk about how to avoid temptation, how to fight those things that we have in our life, because we have a lot more surrounding us than just the one apple. But today's lesson is how to avoid temptation when you're surrounded by apples. Well, that's a green one. Let's get a red one. How to avoid temptation when you're surrounded by apples. Like I said, this place has everything apple. I've got behind me here some things that say welcome, so I thought I was be welcome to film this here. So, but what we're going to talk about is what are some practical things you can do. We are surrounded, as I said, by more temptations than Adam and Eve. They had the one thing, and our lives are just so engulfed in apples. They're everywhere. There's temptations all the way around us. So we're going to talk today a couple things. This is more of a practical lesson thing, how to avoid these things, how to avoid temptations, how to avoid to give in to those things. And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to identify what are your apples. And a ways to do this is are there things in your life that you avoid talking to God about? Are these things that you avoid being involved in spiritual things when you are surrounded by these things or doing these things? Are there certain people that you would never talk to about these things? Also, is there, when you're involved in something, if you feel a little sense of guilt, do you spend more time trying to explain why there's nothing wrong with it? It's not that bad. It was just a little bit. It's no big deal. It's not that much. When we start doing those things, that should be our clue. That should be our way to say, this is evidence that I am definitely in the presence of apples. And so when we get those things, we need to stop and say, well, not just what are the apples, but how do we know when we're surrounded by apples? How do we know when they're just everywhere? Or when are those times that we have apples around us? See, we have to look at like the situations. Are there certain people that when I'm around them, that's when I'm around my apples, that's when I'm around my temptations? Are there certain locations that when I'm there? Are there certain times I feel when I'm depressed, when I'm alone, when I'm lonely, when I'm partying? Are there certain times that our temptations are greater than other times? And so if we can identify those ahead of time, then this is what we can do. We can go into these situations prepared because we thought ahead of time. We didn't just say, well, I'm just going to walk blindly into things. We can walk into things with our eyes open, knowing, hey, this is a chance, this is a time, this is a situation where I typically mess up. When I am here, I tend to do this. When I do that, this tends to happen. So that way we can avoid those things a lot more. Because sometimes you just can't not go situations. You may work around people that just being there is a temptation, just being around these people, and you cannot avoid it. So you have to go in those situations prepared and thinking about what you want to do, what you can do to help yourself to get through these things. And the last thing is how much do you love your apples? Are you committed to this? Are you committed to saying, I'm going to make a change? I'm not going to be this person. I'm not going to do this all the time. I'm going to avoid these things. I want to make this change. And if that's the case, then the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 10:13, there is no temptation that has ever come to us that we can't handle. There is no apple, no matter how much we're surrounded, that we cannot just say, not going to do it. We can say no. Every time we make that choice, we actually make that choice. And the thing is, sometimes you just need to say, you know what? Maybe I should just have an orange. It's possible that we can just say, this one is just not working for me. This is something I shouldn't do. We're just going to let it pass. This apple is not going to be a temptation for me anymore. I need to let it go. And that verse tells us, if nothing else, tells us that if we want to stop, if we want to change, if we want to be different, the only really thing we have to do is just say, hey, God, I need help. I know that you've said that no temptations can come for me that I can't handle. And if that's the case, I got something I just can't seem to stop. And I want you to take it away from me. And you can do that. You can do that. And then you can start looking at different situations in your life and seeing how you can make those changes. Knowing what are the apples in your life, knowing when the apples show up. You don't have to just walk around and keep picking up the apples. Like I said, you can pick up something else. But this is not me telling you, what you've got to do with your life or what you're going to change in your life about this or that. Because I'm telling you, I take a bite out of an apple quite frequently. And, the thing with Adam and Eve is every nibble of that fruit was a sin. So whether you take a nibble, whether you make apple butter, whether you have a whole bushel of apples, it's all sin. And we have to identify it, we have to see what it is, and we have to make a commitment to make that change. Because you know me, I got a full bushel of apples because I'm just a wicked man.